Welcome to Happy to See Me, the podcast that puts the spotlight on the overlooked and underestimated. I'm Erika Casupanan, the first Canadian to win Survivor. But before that, I was a Filipino immigrant and corporate perfectionist who felt doubted and overlooked. Now I'm here to prove that every journey, whether messy, beautiful, or unexpected, is worth celebrating. Every Monday, I bring you candid conversations and relatable pep talks with guests who've defied expectations. If you're ready to feel seen, celebrated, and empowered, you're in the right place. And here, I'm always happy to see you. All right, it's just you and I hanging out today. And it's because I love to ask people if they have any questions for me to answer on the podcast. And I even ask on social media, if I could give you advice on anything, what would you like me to give you advice about? And when I was looking at all of the amazing questions and all of the amazing responses, which thank you so much to everybody who contributes, it means so much to me, I noticed there was a trend in what people were asking me. There were a lot of questions about confidence. There were questions like, how do I become more confident? Or how did you become so confident? And how do I build self-confidence? Even how do I stop giving an F about what people think about me? And number one, I'm very flattered that people believe that I can give you advice about confidence. It actually helps me with my confidence, truly. And I also thought, okay, what can I do to help with this confidence? I know that with the guests that I book on the show, I'm always trying to book people these days who can share some insights from their journeys that can hopefully inspire you and help you to realize the power that you have and to help you to build your confidence. And I figured today, why don't I share some of the lessons that I've learned and the insights I've gotten over the years in terms of how I've been able to build my own confidence. So this episode, it's just you and I. We're just having a chat, just me and the girls, me and the gays, the theys, the guys, everyone here. We're just having a chat like best friends. And this is stuff that I've talked about with my friends in the past. So let's have a chat about confidence. And I also want to preface this by saying that I am not a psychologist. I am not a therapist. You should always put what your therapist says above what I say and probably above what so many influencers you see online and so many other podcasters you hear. Always take their professional opinion over mine when it comes to things like mental health and building confidence. So keep that in mind. But in this conversation, we're buds, and I'm going to tell you some of my lessons that I've learned in confidence over the years. Okay, sound good? So I want to set the table here. It is really nice that so many people have asked me questions about confidence, but when I think back to like 10 years ago, I don't think that many people would actually ask me about confidence. I remember feeling so frustrated because I felt fine in myself, but I would get so much external input on how I should be more confident. And I'd be like, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand. What do you mean? I think I'm just living and existing. I know there'd be in situations when I'd be earlier in my career, I would go to a meeting, I'd be briefed on a project. I feel like I would listen to the brief, I'd understand the context, I'd understand what would be asked of me, and I'd be like, great, okay, I understand, thank you. And then afterwards, I'd get the feedback like, you should have asked more questions or you should have talked more. And I'm like, wait, the point of the meeting was they were to explain to us the project, and I understood the project. So I said, thank you, and it was good. So I felt like I was always getting frustrated because there was kind of this image of a confident person that was being pushed onto me. And if I didn't fit that image, then people would think that I lacked confidence, when really I thought I was just like chilling and I was just fine. And I found that that was a frustration that I ran into a lot. And even as I was preparing for this episode, I was thinking, okay, typically when we imagine a confident person, what do we imagine? We probably imagine someone who is assertive, or we imagine someone who might be heroic and in control and who can tell people what to do and who always knows the right thing to do and who can stand up straight and never looks nervous. Picture in your head all of the qualities you think of when you imagine a confident person. I even went on ChatGPT and I asked, what are the qualities of a confident person? And it said all of the typical things, like someone who carries themselves with ease, has good posture, and doesn't second guess themselves. They are articulate and well-spoken and don't use filler words. And they are decisive and charismatic, and they can make decisions without needing reassurance, and they are not afraid to take up space. Okay, so these are all things that you imagine when you look at somebody. This is how they should behave, and these are the actions that they should do. Then I looked up what the actual definition of confidence is. And confidence is simply a trust in one's abilities, qualities, and judgment. Confidence is actually rooted in self-trust. And I realized confidence is really an inside job. But what we project onto people and what people probably project onto us is about how we act, right? It's the outside. But if confidence is really on the inside, then that means that it can come to life in different ways on the outside. And for me, that was a major lesson that I learned in terms of confidence. Confidence can look different for everybody. As long as you feel that trust in your abilities and your judgment, you don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be confident. And as long as you trust in your abilities and judgment, you don't need to be the person who always knows what to do. In fact, it's okay to say, yeah, I'm not sure about this one. And you can still trust your judgment and your abilities and feel nervous about something. So a big lesson that I learned and that I would love to invite you to think about in terms of reframing how you think of confidence. Confidence doesn't look a certain way. Confidence is about how you feel. I mean, I learned this on a big scale. For folks who have been listening to this podcast for a while, you've probably heard me talk about winning Survivor and also getting backlash from certain fans after I won. And I think it's because there's this perception of what a winner looks like and what they do, and that there's certain ways to win the game that are quote unquote more favorable than others. And you have this certain perception of what winners normally look like and act like. But there's actually many ways to win, and there's many ways to maneuver your way and get to the end. And I think as long as you get to the end and you win the votes, then you're deserving to win. And I think that all of these ways are legitimate. I felt so proud of myself after I won, and then coming home, watching the show and seeing the way the story was told, and then seeing the way that people responded to me, I was like, wait, I was so proud of myself and I know I did well. And now people are saying that I didn't deserve this. I'm like, wait. Like, it was truly just like a mindfuck, if I can be honest. But then I realized the perceptions that people had on me and what their expectations were, that was their own thing. But me being sure of myself and me knowing what I achieved, that was a totally separate thing. I think that when I was able to uncouple my views of my lived experience and my sense of pride in myself and all of the external and what everyone was saying and what everybody was expecting from winners in terms of during the game and after the game, when I was able to really separate the two and to see like what people say is different from who I am and what people expect from me is different from who I am, I was able to feel a lot more grounded and assured in myself. And I was able to strengthen my trust in my abilities and my judgment. And I feel like that was such a big lesson in terms of my confidence. And I think that that's what I really want to drive home for this lesson. That what looks like confidence to other people and what other people might tell you is just like their own narrow view of what something should look like. But knowing that confidence is an inside job about self-trust, you're allowed to deprioritize what other people think about you and really prioritize how you feel. Because at the end of the day, confidence is your trust in how you feel about yourself and your abilities. And when you trust in your abilities, that's going to come to life in different ways. Maybe that comes to life as what people call quiet confidence. Maybe that comes to life in knowing what you don't know. Maybe that comes to life in drawing boundaries and knowing that you can't be the loudest in the meeting, or knowing that you need time to think before you can respond or anything. But free yourself from the expectation that you need to behave in a certain way in order to be confident and focus on how you feel. Okay, the next lesson I learned in building confidence is really reminding yourself that you have proof of your capabilities. I know a few episodes ago when I had Coach Carrie on the podcast, she talked about the idea of collecting receipts and how that could be helpful in really battling imposter syndrome and self-doubt. And the idea of collecting receipts is remembering all of the times that something went well or when you did something that you were proud of, to keep those receipts in mind when something is challenging you. And I love that analogy. I think the way that I thought of that for a long time was actually thinking of my confidence snowball. And what I mean by that is I would start to think of these examples, but to remember that the quality of examples are only going to get better and better. So here's what I mean. If you are in Canada or in another place that snows, you definitely know what it's like to build a snowball. But if you are not, if you imagine a snowball, it's probably something that, is hard. You could build forts with it. You can have a snowball fight with it. It's definitely a solid. But the reality of when you first build a snowball, you're gathering all the snow in your hands and packing them together, and they don't really look like round balls. They're kind of like weird little, whatever solid you can make, essentially. So sometimes they're kind of ball-like, sometimes they're just like little nubs, and then you have to gather more and more snow and keep packing them on. And then they have to be able to create some type of solid object before you can take that snowball, put it on the ground, and then start rolling it. And then as you start rolling it, more snow gets attached to it. It gets bigger and bigger, but then you have to kind of rotate the side that it's on and then roll it in another direction so it doesn't just become a cylinder. And it's this process, and it's always never this perfect thing. It's never a perfect ball. But where it starts, it's like messy and crunchy and kind of awkward. And that's what I think of when it comes to building this confident snowball, because when you first get started, it's really easy for people to say, okay, you want me to collect my receipts, but then I look around and I'm like, I don't really feel like I have anything that's substantial that feels like a good thing that can remind me of what I'm capable of. It could be somebody early in their career saying, how am I supposed to build the confidence if I'm new in my career and I don't have these shiny examples? So I think that when it comes to building this confidence snowball, take the smallest wins and put them at the base of the snowball, right? And then build upon those there. Knowing that you even finished any program in school or any class in school can be the start of the confidence snowball, or getting complimented on your presentation skills, or getting complimented on the way that you think about things, or the way that you solve problems. That can be at the beginning of the snowball. And as the snowball gets bigger and bigger and you start to roll it, then you start to collect more shiny examples. But it's really an ongoing process that gets better and better and better as you go. And then you will have this snowball of all of these examples that you can think about when your confidence is challenged. And even when that voice with all of that self-doubt comes up, you can say, hey, I have this snowball with years worth of these wins and things that I'm proud of that prove to this voice of self-doubt that I am capable and that I have done things. So I always love to think of building that confidence snowball. And the thing is, you can think about this snowball of all these amazing examples of your past achievements when there are moments of doubt. But honestly, what I find is after you start to build that confidence and you know that that snowball's there are days where I don't even need to think about it because I just have that innate trust in myself. So I want to give an example of when I would think of my confidence snowball. I remember when I first started at university a long time ago now. Oh my gosh, like almost 20 years ago now. But I went to a university a few hours away from home. A lot of people from my high school went to the local university, but I insisted on going to the university a few hours from home. Like so many other people, being such a high achiever in high school, getting good grades. I did this program where the grades were all bell curved. So all of the grades needed to add up to a certain class average that was in the low 70s or something. So it meant most of the people in the class had to have their averages in the 70s. So I went from being what I thought was a good high school student to just being average. And then also the school that I went to, there were a lot of students who came from more affluent families. I had a lot of humble beginnings. And I was just thinking, okay, now I'm average academically, and in other ways, I feel like I'm below everybody else. How am I supposed to find success here? And then what I thought of was my high school time, actually. I thought of starting high school in grade 9, being so scared of being in high school, not really knowing the students who came from the other elementary schools not really knowing what to do. And then by the time I got to grade 12 in high school, I felt like I had a good group of friends. I had so many extracurriculars. I was like the president of this or the editor of the school magazine or in all these clubs. And I had built up a nice community and a nice network. And I had really felt a lot more confidence in my place in the school by the end of the 4 years. So when I was in first year university, I reminded myself, okay, when you're in grade 9, you felt this way, but it just took a few years. And by the end, you felt like you had a place there and you felt really good about your growth and about your leadership skills and all of that stuff. So just give yourself the time. And then lo and behold, I get to the end of my 4th year of university. And once again, my grades improved. I was the president of so many extracurriculars. I had so many friends from all the different extracurriculars that I had. I felt like I was a medium-sized fish in a small pond. I felt really good about where I was at by the time I graduated university. And I realized, yeah, even though I started these things and I felt a little insecure, when I just gave myself time, I ended up getting to a place where I felt really proud of myself. So then again, once I left school and I started in the working world where I was an intern and then I got my first full-time job where I was making basically no money, felt so junior, didn't really know anybody in the industry, didn't really think that I had a lot of skills. I told myself, okay, I've proved it to myself in high school and in university. If I just give it some time, I'm going to build those networks. I'm going to build those skills. I'm going to build my credibility and I'm going to get to where I want to go. And I ended up building a successful career in public relations and marketing. Once again, I gave myself the time. So then in the last couple of years, I then pivoted again to be a creative entrepreneur. Once again, leaving what I felt comfortable with in this new place, new way of working. I don't know anybody. How do I know what I'm going to do? Where do I build credibility? And at that point, I had amassed the examples of high school, university, my career in public relations. But honestly, by the time I got to this time, I didn't even have to have all of those initial insecurities in the same way because I thought, yeah, I already know I proved it to myself those other 3 times. If you just give me time, I'm going to make it happen. Of course, there's the few years at the beginning are shaky. I won't discredit that, but I really do feel like I'm in a good position now. So that is the value of building that confidence snowball. So start thinking of the examples you might have. Again, whether it's time from high school, university, even from the few years ago, and it could apply to career, it could apply to anything else, right? Like even making new friends, let's say. Think about times when you have put yourself out there and talked to somebody you didn't know and it was an enjoyable experience. Put that on the snowball. Or you hung out with a group of people who you'd never hung out with before. Add that to your snowball and just start building your snowball and things will get better and easier. And you'll reach a point where you don't have to think about the snowball that much. And I do want to add almost like a lesson 2.5 to this one. And this one is have self-compassion. I've definitely talked to friends over the years who I consider to be such confident people, and they have so many examples of amazing things that they've accomplished. But then they'd be in situations where they felt so challenged, and then they would look at all of their examples of previous accomplishments and then start to feel so down on themselves. Why don't I feel like that confident person right now? Did I go backwards? Did I regress? I have all this proof. Why aren't I feeling like this right now? And I want to say, have self-compassion. The reality is we are going to feel the most confident and be the most ourselves in situations where we feel psychologically safe. And situations that are toxic are going to affect your ability to feel confident. So if you're in one of those situations, do have some compassion for yourself if you are struggling to really locate your confidence. Like I recently had a conversation with a friend who I consider to be brilliant, incredibly confident, have demonstrated so many amazing leadership skills over the years. And they're going through a challenging time at their work. And they were frustrated. Like, why am I not feeling confident? Why am I not feeling self-assured? What's wrong with me? I know all of this stuff. And it really became clear to me that the environment that you're in really does impact your ability to access those feelings of confidence. So I want to remind you, if you are in a stressful situation, whether it's a toxic work environment or you're going through a challenging time with a friend, and you're not feeling as confident as you normally do, or your examples of all of your achievements aren't hitting in the same way, you're normal. In these situations, please remember that you don't lack confidence. You're simply being challenged. And maybe what you need is to reframe the situation. Maybe instead of thinking, oh my gosh, why am I not confident right now? Why am I not self-assured right now? You can think, okay, this is the situation that I am in. How can I figure out my strategy for this situation? Because at the end of the day, you and all of your achievements and the confidence you've built up over the years, it's still inside you. It's still there. It's not like it just disappeared. You have to figure out a different strategy for dealing with the situation you're in so you can still access and even protect the confidence that you have. And that is a whole other thing. I wish I could give you advice on that one. I think that that is so contextual. At this point, all I can remind you is to have self-compassion. When you're in those situations, don't think of it as you yourself are lacking anything or are unworthy or are not capable. You're simply being challenged. And the last lesson I learned about being confident, I actually learned early on in my public relations career. So when I first started working in public relations, this was back in the day. Well, for me, back in the day meant, oh my gosh, I'm doing the math right now. 13 years ago. Whoa, very weird that I've been working that long. This is when I got my first full-time job. In public relations, we always did this thing called media relations. So media relations is working with journalists to influence them to write favorable articles or news stories or radio segments about your clients and the businesses you represent. And one of the tactics we would do for media relations was to call journalists and to pitch them on our clients. Imagine you are in your early 20s and you're given a list, an Excel spreadsheet with about 100 journalists on them and 100 phone numbers. And we had to call these journalists and actually talk to them on the phone, almost like we were telemarketers pitching them on our clients. Now, as you can imagine, if you were a journalist and you were busy and you had a bunch of things going on, would you want to be talking to a public relations person on the phone who's trying to pitch you on their client? I don't even answer my phone if it's a phone number I don't know. Of course, nobody wants to receive these types of phone calls. So when we were assigned to do this work, it always felt like an uphill battle. I always just felt like I would pick up the phone, call them, and be ready for someone to just hang up. Like the success rate was so low. If you got a list of 100 people and you got maybe 1 or 2 people to actually write an article about your client, that was considered a huge win. So for all of the junior people who had this job, this was probably everybody's least favorite thing to do. So one day we had kind of like a lunch and learn, and somebody from the office who had been there a few years before me led a lunch and learn on how they do their media relations calls. And this person is someone who I still think is one of the smartest people that I ever worked with. I'm so fortunate that I had time to work with this person so early in my career because they taught me so much about strategy. And I would just really pay attention whenever they presented a business strategy. And I thought they were the smartest and most confident person ever. So this person was sharing practical tips on how to do these calls and how to get people to actually talk to you. And then their last tip was, when I make these phone calls, I actually pretend I'm not me. I pretend I'm an actor and I'm acting like a confident person who knows that people want to hear me on the phone and who is confident that they make these calls. And I literally pretend like I'm somebody else. And I did that enough until I started to build the confidence to do these phone calls. And when I heard this advice, I was mind blown because I'm like, wait, this person who I looked up to, who I thought was the most capable and confident person ever, had to pretend like they weren't themselves in order for them to do this activity. What? So that was really grounding for me to hear that other people who I really look up to still have to work on their self-confidence. And it was also so fascinating to me that you could just step into this role of being somebody who's confident and then eventually just take on those qualities and have them for yourself. So a huge lesson I learned is that you can step into the role of a confident person. So that's something I kept in mind as I went on in my career. And I think something that people are so afraid of is public speaking. Now, I work as a keynote speaker, so I actually love public speaking. And now people ask me for my advice about public speaking. And I'm like, hey, this might not be for everybody, but I have found it has been helpful. When I first started doing longer speeches back at my corporate job, when I'd feel nervous, sometimes I would pretend like I was an actor and that I was playing the role of a confident speaker. I'm like, so think about that. Okay. So we can step into the role of a confident person. But does this go back to the list that I shared earlier in the episode of we have this perception of what confidence looks like? And now if we step into the role of a confident person, we just have to step into this perception that everybody has and play the role that everybody expects us to? I want to say, no, not necessarily. So here's the other thing. You can determine what a confident person means to you. And the way that I recommend doing this, and the way that I also think about my future a lot, is I think about how I want to feel. So when you are at your most confident, say you've built the confidence that you want, how do you want to feel? Do you want to feel calm? Not as anxious, you just feel calm and you feel ready. Do you want to feel present? Not thinking about all of the other outcomes and all of the ways that something could go wrong, and not thinking about all of the mistakes you've made in the past or the awkward thing you said in that conversation 6 years ago. Are you going to be thinking about all those things? Or are you going to be present? Or are you going to be questioning whether you've researched enough, whether you are capable enough, whether you are good enough, whether you deserve to be there? Or are you going to be self-assured? What's the version of a confident person that you want to keep in mind? What does it mean to you, and how do you want to feel when you reach that level of confidence? This is something I've thought about, and I've thought, I want to feel ease. And not that I think life is easy. I actually think that life is always going to present challenges. So I don't want to say easy, but I want to feel a sense of ease in that I can handle a high volume of activity. I can handle lots of projects. I can handle pressure. And no matter what's placed on me and no matter what's in front of me, because I feel confident, I want to feel a sense of ease. So that's the first step. Imagine how you want to feel. And then when you imagine all of the feelings that you'll have once you become this confident person, now you can start to imagine how this confident person will behave. And that's when you can start to think of things like someone's posture. Or how does somebody speak? Are they speaking really quickly? Are they cutting people off, trying to make sure they get a word in? In your mind, for the confident person you want to feel like, how should they speak? Are they second guessing themselves? Or are they sharing their statements and feeling assured in knowing that they mean what they said? How are they responding to questions? The ones that they're prepared for, the ones that they are not prepared for, and even the ones that are a little bit challenging. Are they going to waffle and try to come up with an answer? Are they going to know what they know and know what they don't know? Are they going to defer to the right people, even if it means that the spotlight is not on them for a moment? Just imagine if you were to feel the way you wanted to feel, and that's when you can start to play the role of a confident person. You can be that actor. You can step into the role of the confident person. You can behave in all of the ways that you yourself have imagined and defined as a confident person. And as you do this more and more, you eventually start to develop these traits yourself, and you actually end up becoming this confident person that you had in your mind. And I want to say, it's really up to you to define how confidence is going to feel for you and what you want that to look like for you. Again, I want to remind you, confidence does not need to be the loudest person in the room. I'm sure you have encountered many loud people who are so insecure. You know, it doesn't need to be the person who always knows what to do and is always in control, because you've probably met people who are control freaks, and it's because they fear what would happen if they weren't in control. So you don't have to follow anybody's mold on what it means to be confident. You can define confidence for yourself. And the last thing, this is just the last mini lesson to cap it off. Building confidence is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. There's going to be trial and error. It's a lot of working on mindset and things that feel good to you. So of the things that I shared today, take the ones that feel good, try them out, and if they don't feel good, leave them. That's totally fine. But allow yourself to have the time to build that confidence and have self-compassion if you have ups and downs. Like I said, for a long time, I would think about being a nervous grade 9 growing into a grade 12 with a little bit more confidence. And when I gave myself that time, I knew that I would get there. So remember, it's a process and give yourself some time. So those are the lessons I've learned on confidence. Hopefully these are helpful to people. And let me know if you have any other questions for me or other themes for me, because I love when we get to just chat. I love when we get to just hang out. And I want to say thank you to everybody who submitted these questions too. So that's it from me on confidence. What would make me feel a lot more confident is if you could please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, we're on social media in so many of the places. It's at Happy to See Me Pod. Thank you so much for spending a bit of time with me. It does build my confidence to know that people are tuning in, and I hope you are getting something out of this episode. And I will be happy to see you next Monday.
This podcast has been brought to you by the Sonar Network. Sonar!